most universities are not here. Most research institutes are not here because the research institute sector in Nigeria cuts across 14 MDAs. And so when Science and Tech is doing something, even though I know it will, the Science and Tech Ministry will invite the other ministries, but they won't come, they'll see it as Science and Tech something. And there's no common body that can organize research institutions in Nigeria. The only body organizing that you say can organize is the ASURI, Academic Staff Union, because we have members that cut across these institutions, all these institutions in the different ministries. But we don't have the capacity, or it is not within our purview, or we don't even have the authority to compel any ministry to send its research institutes here. And even when you talk to individual institutes outside science and they tell you they don't have the money to come. And some of them are even afraid that if they come, their ministry here, they will not be happy for them to spend money, that they spend money coming to Expo, Science and Tech Expo. And so there is really no coordination. Now, you know that research institutions, research is a science and tech thing. And so you expect that. In fact, there was a time in this country when all research institutions were under science and tech. But we have this policy somersault all the time. But as it is now, the science and technology, there's a science and technology policy in this country, which was initiated in the 60s. As I'm hearing, I'm just being told now that it's being reviewed this year again. And it is sponsored, the review is sponsored by UNESCO. And I think when it was also initiated in the 60s, it was also sponsored by UNDP, or one of these institutions, or one of these global institutions. But the funny thing is that when it was initiated in 1960, it was also initiated in so many other countries. So many other countries that you hear today, India, Pakistan, South Korea. That was when I think UNDP or UNESCO initiated the science and technology policy for all these countries. But one major component of the science and technology policy is the funding mechanism and the coordination mechanism for research institutions. And all these other countries just carried out, implemented that policy, and look at where they are now after 50 years or 60 years. But Nigeria did not implement the policy. What they did was they kept reviewing it. It has been reviewed 13 times. This year it will be the 14th review. And so they will continue to review it until somebody has the political will to implement that policy, especially the funding component. So we are here, institutions are back, there's poor funding. For a country that can boast to be the most endowed nation, naturally endowed nation in the world, we always keep saying that this country cannot be compared with any other nation in the world in terms of the diversity, quality, and quantity of natural resources. So by God's creation, we are supposed to be the richest if we had converted our resources to wealth. But by our own making, we have become the poverty capital. It's just even not a matter of being poverty capital. If I just poverty capital and the citizens can go to sleep and sleep at night, it's a different thing. Now, this country is on the brink because of insecurity, because of poverty, because of kidnapping, herdsmen crisis, insurgency, prostitution, immigration. Nigerians are running away to other countries and are used as slaves. Just because a nation cannot develop the political will, we have become the butt of mockery, to other nations, because they keep wondering what's wrong with Nigeria.
Okay. One might argue, for the purpose of enlightenment, one might argue that in a way the government has set up TED Fund. Can you differentiate exactly what is it that TED Fund is doing and what is
Yes, very clearly. TED Fund was created for university funding of research and other infrastructure at university. Now, after some time, the National Assembly has said, "Oh, let us push that fund to the point where it will fund research generally. It will improve research institutions." And ASU and TED Fund came there, and they were so antagonistic, even threatening the National Assembly that if they tamper with TED Fund as it is, that they will go back to the trenches. That it was ASU that initiated it, and they meant it. And every time, I can remember 4 good times in the past 10 years that National Assembly has attempted to, amend the TED Fund Act, and TED Fund refused, and ASU refused. Now, that was what pushed ASURI to now pursue the issue of the National Research and Innovation Council. And that council also includes funding of universities, research universities. Now, the truth about it is that the man in charge of TED Fund, the man that I will say that we can call TED Fund himself, that is Professor Bogoro, has stated, and it was published, that the research that is done in the universities is not mainly the research for development. So he himself agrees that mandate research that we have in research institute is different from the blue sky research or sky blue research that you have in the universities, which is driven by academic freedom, where any lecturer can choose to do whatever research. And that research is mainly to aid them in their teaching and promotion. If you go to the dictionary, you check sky blue research, you will see it there. It's a known factor that the university system, there's academic freedom. You don't compel anybody to do a particular research. He does research within his field as much as he wants to do. Depending on his own thinking, he doesn't have to give consideration to whether that research is going to contribute to any development, so long as it has to knowledge.
This year's Expo, what new?
Well, you know that, yes. No, ASURI, every year we come to this Expo, and we go around and we check. All we see, because we are monitoring, is the same thing that they have been bringing, because we know there is no research funding. We are the people operating in this research institute. We know that even the research funding has even reduced if you consider inflation. So we know that even some research institutes, I can tell you, can't even come. They can't even attend the Expo because they don't have the fund to attend. So the Expo is not even instead of improving, what we have is that there's a reduction in activity. And then, because there's no funding coming in, nothing new is coming out. And then we also know that, for instance, look at the issue of COVID-19. You'll be surprised that as we speak today, there is no serious government effort on COVID-19 research. I can tell you that because I'm in touch with all the medical institutions that have, medical components of research. And I can tell you that they are not being carried along. Nobody is making any effort for a country of 200 million people. So that's the situation. And then we have come up with a national conditions of service for research institutions. And luckily enough, the presidency has approved it, and we have innovations that can impact research. One of them is that the budget of each institution, the monitoring and allocation of budget now will have a committee where there will be members of the union, so that the union will now know when they are wasting the money in buying equipment, buying vehicles and building structures when research is not being funded. So there's that committee in the new conditions of service for research. There's also another component of that conditions of service that provides for allocation of funds to each researcher, something that has never been done before in this country. That each researcher should have fund for his own research, personally given to him, not to buy equipment and tell him, "Oh, yeah, go and look for funds for running costs to do the research." But what you are seeing is that there is a delay, a deliberate attempt to frustrate the implementation of that condition of service. As I speak to you now, the union is on strike. We've been on strike since December over the implementation of a condition of service approved by the presidency. So this is a country where the presidency will approve something and somebody as low as at the level of the chief executive of the research institute, not even at the level of the ministry, will refuse to implement. That will show you, because there is no coordination. And now the presidency has approved this thing. Nobody is coordinating. There's no coordination. Nobody is coordinating whether it is implemented or not. And the union has to fight to make sure that it's implemented. And to fight to make sure it's implemented, we have to shut down for months, if not years. So what is it all about? Create this council that is chaired by the president of the country, so that research can be coordinated and funded. And you also remember that the component of the Research and Innovation Council, there is the component of Research Fund, National Research Fund in that council. And the Research Fund will be mainly funded not by federal government budget, but by tax that are already being taken by about 10 institutions, federal institutions that collect tax, and they are asked to just contribute 5% of that, of what they get as income, into the council, so that there will be nationally coordinated and funded research. So it's not even going to put any burden on the fund of the country, or budget of the nation, because the money is already there. It's just to get small money, pick small money from 5% from all these institutions that that collects this research fund and then fund it. So we are here. We are watching. We are hoping that we want to resume the struggle for the actualization of the research fund, as soon as possible. God bless you.